Ladies and gentlemen, not everyone has joined us yet, but I would like to get us started for the discussion about border control priorities, freedom or security. My name is Paweł Świeboda. I'm the head of a Warsaw-based think tank on European affairs, Demos Europa, and I will have the pleasure of moderating today's discussion. I feel like a bit of a veteran fan of Frontex and the European border guard culture. I think the word "fun" in a stadium like this is the appropriate one, since I remember vividly the early days of Frontex. It seems like it was yesterday, and here we have a fully fledged operation taking place out there, ensuring the protection of EU's borders. I'm joined this afternoon by four excellent speakers of the younger generation, both practitioners and analysts, whom I will introduce in a second. And you will suspect what is behind the idea of having a panel like this. The idea is to have a refreshing perspective on the set of priorities in front of Europe when it comes to border control and when it comes to this tension perhaps between freedom and security. Let me say two things at the outset before I introduce the speakers and before we get into the discussion. I sense that we often take for granted things which are among the biggest achievements of the European Union. The free movement of persons definitely, to my mind, belongs to that category. I mean, the younger generation was sort of born into a situation in which the freedom of movement exists. So we need to look at it from that perspective. The second point is that we are in very difficult times. And in times like this, people do reassess what they value most. And the question that I will be posing today is, how is it reflected when it comes to freedom and security nexus? Do we see an imprint of the crisis in that discussion? Let me introduce the speakers. On my left, there is Laura Tichonova, who comes from the Latvian border guards. She is based at a small port called Ventspils. So one of the smallest outposts where the border guards are located. Further on my left, Romain Foucard, who is based at the College of Europe, the Natolin College, the Natolin campus just south of Warsaw. Romain is a graduate of University of Marseille and University of Copenhagen, and he is writing his thesis on a very relevant topic for our discussion on the respect for fundamental rights by Frontex. So I would like to bring him into the discussion first. In fact, on my right-hand side, there is Tim Baumann from the German police force, who has just spent some time in Malta, and we are eager to hear about how the Maltese experience compares, in his view, to his German experience from the everyday work. And last but not least, Denis Chenusa from also the College of Europe, the Natolin campus. Denis is from Moldova, and he's at the moment writing his thesis about the visa dialogue between the EU and Russia. I would like to bring all of you into the discussion at an early stage. So I will ask all the people in the panel maybe one or two questions, but please prepare your burning comments for about 20 minutes from now. Romain, if I could start with you, if you could get us introduced into this delicate issue of the balance between freedom and security, both from the point of view of how the legal doctrine has evolved and how the practice has evolved in the European context?
Well, thank you very much, Pavel. I would like first to put the emphasis on the fact that you have to ensure security at the outside to ensure freedom inside. Meaning that with the abolition of border controls between the EU member states inside the Schengen free movement area, there are no border controls anymore, but at external borders, which are the task of Frontex. So this is really important to remember that security and freedom goes together, and you cannot exclude one from the other. Security goes with freedom, because if you only ensure security without ensuring freedom and civil liberties, you kind of have a police state, if the expression is well appropriate. And on the other side, if you ensure freedom without ensuring security, it does not allow people to enjoy their freedom without the risk of being, under a threat. For example, the threat of organized crime, for example. So there are two sides of the same coin. And we are going to try to assess which one of the side is the more prominent in this perspective. So regarding the security issue, we can see that, for example, in a Frontex report, we talked about threats. Now we talk about risk. So we can see that the wording of the Frontex report are very much related to security. And then the mission of border guards and of border control is to control and to prevail the entry of people, illegal people, inside the EU. So once again, the emphasis is much more focused on security than on freedom. But on the other hand, as I said before, freedom at the external side security at the external side guarantee the freedom at the internal side. So from citizens from the EU traveling all around the Schengen zone without being under the threat of organized crime, for example. And we also can see that there has been many developments in the favor of fundamental rights recently, especially within the Frontex framework, with, for example, the adoption of a fundamental rights strategy, with the creation of a fundamental rights officer, of a fundamental rights consultative forum, and with the draft of a code of conduct for people operating under Frontex, or the Frontex lead. So what I want to say to introduce this debate is that we are going towards the right direction regarding fundamental rights, but there are still many things to be done in order to reach perfection, if I may say.
Romain, if I could ask you a supplementary question about what you have just said, that you have sort of seen more emphasis on security, especially in the early days. I mean, isn't it perhaps part of a sequencing issue that the new mechanisms, once they are put in place, they are there primarily in order to ensure security. And in the second step, what is being done is there is effort to make sure that the needs of fundamental rights are also taken care of. Isn't that a sequencing challenge in your view?
Well, as I said, we cannot really dissociate one from another. And I think that security was at the beginning the main concern because of the political atmosphere and political trend towards more securitization, especially in regards with the 9/11 attacks, from the London bombings, from the Madrid bombings. So people were really afraid and really demanding for more security.
Very good, but one cannot go without the other. Dennis, if I can turn to you for a reflection about what things look like from the other side, meaning from the side of the migrants. What are their perceptions of the way in which the European Union understands this freedom/security nexus?
I think that, in fact, we have a kind of perception that is created by the policies run by the EU and the European member states, and about this tendency to securizate policy on migration. And in this field, I would like to say that probably, as I'm coming from a country of origin of many migrants that are working in Europe, and not only in Europe and Russia as well. So there is a perception that Europe is a kind of is putting obstacles against the possibility to catch opportunities. Opportunities, of course, I mean first of all economic opportunities. But in the same time, what is doing the European Union and countries, member states, is creating the image of a fortress, and this permanent idea to strengthen the walls because are coming migrants that can one day occupy entire Europe. So it's a kind of perception that is caused by the actions and by the movements within the European Union. So to continue the idea of perception drivers, I would like to say that we should categorize also migrants. So, as already was mentioned in the beginning, there are many categories, and also there are new categories of people that should be identified and should be, in a way, classified in not in penal sense of word. So we are talking about about those who are seeking for economic opportunities, and they would like really to help themselves and in the same time to help their families that are at home in the countries of origin in sense of economic development. And there are survival migrants, as we can call them, who are looking for safe place or who are looking for asylum. So it's about refugees and asylum seekers. So these two categories, probably they have different perceptions about the EU. But one point is common. They see Europe as a kind of fortress that should be in a way occupied, but in sense to find a backside, the door to go into, and to find opportunities to develop, I don't know, to develop their plans of personal development, or to help their families. As I mentioned, the case of migrants from Moldova, and about remittances that they are sending home, and that create about 1/3 of the national GDP, which is a lot. I mean, it's a kind of source that also allow the country to exist and to be a functional entity.
If you were to look at the trend of how the EU measures are being perceived, in your view, is the perception of EU as a fortress getting more solidified when it comes to especially migrants from Eastern Europe? And is it a communication challenge in your view? What could the EU do better in order to communicate its objectives? You are studying visa dialogue. Do you think that visa dialogue is effective as it is? What would be your ideas to improve it?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important thing is to change this negative perception, and what is already done is the tendency to exclude the word illegal migration and to apply instead of that irregular migration. And this is one of the terminology that is very frequently used, and also it is part of the terminology applied for visa facilitation agreements, and right now liberalization visa process. So of course, by creating legal frameworks and legal means for migrants, you can ensure a good image for the entire Europe, because let's not forget about what the academic people like to use, the normative power of the European Union, and which is very important. And in case it will not be taken into account, all this misuse of terminology, like I mentioned already, for example, illegal migration, we can lose, and we can we can weaken the power and the legitimacy of the European Union in the field of migration, and giving standards for positive treatment and approaches about migration from the outside of the European Union and also within you, because there are some sides of the migration for the people who already are within the EU, and they are like, I don't know, they are already engaged in the labor market, or they are still looking for doing that.
Thank you very much. Tim, you serve on daily basis at the Cologne-Bonn airport, but you have just spent some time in Malta studying their experience, and I want to benefit from that to ask you reflect on whether we can build a common denominator in Europe on freedom versus security in a situation in which member states face very different pressures, because surely the pressures that Malta faces are different from those which you come across in your daily work. So what has that experience taught you about the building of a common denominator in Europe?
Yes, in general, to say this about the topic in general, freedom and security, I think the point of view is we have several aspects. Once we have the folks that are living in several nations and countries, or even living in Europe, they have their understanding of security and what they expect. That's what Roman basically said about the risks, threats and all that. And of course we have the migrants coming. And as you mentioned, I was in Malta, and I'm in the lucky situation to be able to compare what border guarding is in Germany and what it is in Malta, and how different it is. What I experienced in Malta as a small island, just for the migrants coming from the southern part by boat, by ship, who are expecting their freedom and security in Europe. Malta is their entrance to Europe, basically. That's where they land. And Malta, as a small island, has not the capacity of handling all these masses of migrants coming in. And so they have to deal with it somehow, and they're doing pretty good, in my opinion, but probably not in the way that the migrants are expecting when they're talking about the safe, secure, and free Europe. Because Malta, welcoming or being the country that those people, those migrants, come in, they send them to detention centers and keep them there, and they keep them on the island. And of course, what you said in your introductory statement, as a migrant coming to Europe, I'm looking for free movement, I'm looking for my chances to set up a new life, and all these freedom that comes with it. So they are held, or not held, but they will live in these detention centers and go through a long process when they claim asylum and all that, and finally either get approved and stay on Malta, maybe make it to the other parts of Europe somehow, but a lot of them are sent back too, because their request for asylum is not approved. In Germany, we are people, migrants that are looking for Germany as their destination. They don't see Germany as the entrance to Europe. Some of them, or most of them, see Germany for their destination. They want to be in Germany because of social benefits, social system. That's what they look for, and that's what they heard of in their home countries. So in Malta, it's more about handling the situation with masses of migrants coming in, and actually ensuring those legal standards, that everybody's treated right, and the process is done in a correct way. While in Germany, we have more the problems that the migrants are coming in either smuggled or we just don't see them as migrants, as in Malta. In Malta, they have boats coming in, and they know, okay, we have 50 or 80 migrants on these boats. In Germany, it's more about detecting those migrants and to see them and give them the help or whatever, start a process which is connected to that. So yeah, it was very interesting for me to be able to compare this, and which is very important too, is about the communication issues. I saw that the way Maltese border guards work are pretty much, they use the same system we have. With the start of the Schengen Information System, Part 2, that was just launched a couple months ago, we are all working with the same technique, and we pretty much have the same skills and are taught the same way, but all countries are still working a little bit by themselves. So Frontex is an important part to join those forces and to assist other countries. And as Roman said, again, we are on the right way here. That's what I discovered. And it's all about cooperation, cooperation, cooperation. That's what was one of the key essences in the first discussion. It's about skills and communication.
Brilliant. I will want to open up in just a second, so please prepare your questions or comments, and there will be microphones traveling around. But before I do that, Laura, I would like to ask you pretty much the same question, because you sit at a small port in Latvia, but at the same time, you know, the chain is as strong as every one of its links. So how do you see these challenges of freedom and security?
Thank you. As Tim mentioned about the capacity of the flow of the people, I want to talk about Latvia, which is a rather small country, and I'm coming from a seaport, and the capacity of it, you can't even compare it with Malta or with Germany. So I will talk about the everyday work on the daily basis. As my colleague mentioned, laws, regulations, all the balance in the freedom and security is good within the paperwork, but when you are on the border, when you are working, and when you have to deal with the flow of people, and you have to make a decision whether he is a good man or a bad man, it's just about experience. And experience, we as a small country, we have to have this experience and of course training. So it all comes to the cooperation with the big countries like Germany, like Malta, when they have a big capacity of migrants. And yes, it's all about the trainings. So as my colleague said about the perfection, I think that only practice makes perfect. So yes.
Perfect, Laura. Thank you very much. Would there be questions at this stage? Please don't be shy. There are lots of sensitive and important issues which have been mentioned already. Yes, please. I would like to take maybe 2 or 3.
Hi, I'm Ray Kozlowski from State University of New York at Albany, and I have a question for, I guess, Roman, and then others may want to chime in. Now, this is a panel about the next generation, younger people, so I want to address that issue. In terms of the tension between freedom and security is often played out in the issue of privacy and data protection. Now, in the Facebook generation, where all sorts of information is being given out to everyone, have the norms on privacy changed? And how does that affect this balance between security and freedom?
Excellent question. Very relevant in the context of the smart borders proposals. If you read the European Parliament's opinion about it, it gets directly to the point you made about data protection and whether measures proposed are or not proportional. Who else would like to enter the discussion at this stage? Well, while you are thinking, maybe Romain, I would ask you to comment first about well the new generation challenges which the information era brings with them, especially with regards to data protection.
Well, thank you very much for the question. As you said, the technology evolution is going really, really fast in such an area. Regarding Frontex and border control management, Frontex is bound by the provisions of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU. Frontex and the border guards in general have to respect public international law, especially human rights law. Human rights law, I mean especially the European Convention on Human Rights, which states in one of the articles, I don't remember the number, sorry, that the right to privacy is a fundamental right. And as regards the Charter of Fundamental Rights, we have kind of a similar provision that protects personal data protection. Well, I'm not a practitioner, and I'm just in my books, but agencies like Frontex and like Border Controls Agency have to respect data protection, even if sometimes it's really difficult with illegal migrants and some screening practices that have been criticized, especially by Human Rights Watch. But then, as I said before, I'm not a practitioner, and I cannot really give a really detailed answer to that question. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Dennis?
Just before coming, I was looking for some research in the field of what is doing and how is dealing with human rights problems Frontex, and I found a lot of critics regarding this specific issue, right to the protection of personal data, and there are a lot of NGOs which are criticizing Frontex for not respecting this principle of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU, in sense that the explanation is that, of course, information is taken many times. It's interviews are done by interpreters. I'm speaking here more about Greece. And the information taken and collected during the interviews with refugees, I don't know, asylum migrants, as persons are identifying themselves. And many times this information can be corrected and can be rectified by migrants. So who are deciding the fates of people is Frontex, and unfortunately, the democratic control that should be done by the European Parliament, in this sense, it is not so strong, and probably this is one of the weaknesses that should be addressed in order to improve, because not only this fundamental rights right is violated by Frontex, also the obstacle to the right to leave any country, inhuman and degrading treatments. So there is a list of rights that, at least from the point of view of NGOs, and here I'm talking about the Migrants Europe is a network of NGOs. So they wrote a research for Parliament, for some fractions of the groups of the European Parliament, where they criticized Frontex for this deviation from the principles of Charter of Fundamental Rights.
But it's easy to say violation. But what is more difficult is to judge when interference with the right to privacy is justified and when it is not, because the right to privacy, as you've mentioned, is enshrined in the European Charter. It's also enshrined in the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. But at the same time, interference is justified when a legitimate aim is to be served and when it is proportionate to this aim. Now, the crux of the matter is how to judge when this happens. Would you have any reflections about the practical side of it, basically?
Well, to speak for the practical side, I was wondering if, sir, where are you? If the question that you imposed, because you were talking about Facebook, issues like that, was that the right way that you?
You need the microphone, please.
That's what I figured. So if you can please specify it a little bit, because
let me put it to you this way: is that many of my students, who again are using social media, who have laptops that they get access with fingerprint biometrics, or thumb drives that they use with fingerprint biometrics, and old fogies, old people like me, who are not on social media, who avoid having all sorts of information on the internet, have different attitudes towards privacy and protection of privacy. And I'm wondering if there are different attitudes among the younger generation, and that some of the concerns about privacy have changed.
So we're not talking about the legal framework as such, we are talking about attitudes.
We're talking about practice.
How they are changing.
And whether it's not as big of an issue as it had been in the past, and looking towards the future of, for example, collecting biometric information.
Okay.
Well understood.
Yeah. From the practical side here, especially the collection of person-related data, I think we are in a lucky state, speaking for Germany, but speaking for Malta too, speaking for the European Union, border agencies in the European Union in general, that we have very high-level technique that we can use, and we have the technical base to share a lot of information. However, we don't use all the possibilities that we have. Talking about the registration of persons, for example, persons coming to Europe, let's say the example of claiming asylum, with the new Schengen information system, we have theoretically, or that's a goal. The goal is that when a person enters Europe, says, hey, I'm here, I want asylum, he gets registered with all his data. He gets his fingerprints taken, and everything that has to do with the whole process is covered and shared between the European countries. So, of course, we have, within the Border Patrol, we have generations, just as we are here. We have colleagues who have been on duty for 20, 25, 30 years who actually, when they started being a border guard, they had closed borders, they had checkpoints, everybody had to be at the checkpoint, show their passport, and that was what they considered to be a border guard. Today, all this is changing. It's not, our task is not anymore about standing in line and checking everybody. We have to be ahead of what is going on. We have to, I always say, because we had this in the first discussion this morning, we were talking about control. And as a policeman, I can say we like the word control, not in a sense of controlling persons, but of course, all policemen want to control situations. And for the control of a situation, it is essential to use as much data as I can get. Talking or going away from this specific topic, we have in Germany and in other parts of Europe, we have the discussion about data storage for a longer term, which comes with the restrictions of privacy and maybe even freedom. For the younger generation, of course, we all like that because we are positive thinking, not saying somebody's abusing this information. We are used to collecting information, and the more information you have on a specific thing, the more you can follow trends and analyze it. So I'm not sure if I'm... Yes? Okay, I'm answering your question. I'm glad.
But Tim, you are a young practitioner, so for you a database is a natural resource.
Yes, right.
But if you were to step out, or anybody else, in fact, if you were to step out of your shoes and reflect on what the younger generation's attitude to data privacy is, and how then it's likely to be translated into the world of norms, so what would you say?
Maybe, Paul, I'm sorry.
Yes.
One aspect that I didn't mention at all about the police work is, of course, not only we use technique, but the people that we deal with use modern techniques too. So talking about migration, for example, it changed in a way that when we have immigrants coming to us, they are very well informed. We do our research, of course, but they do their research too, and they are all connected in a very high way. So, but I don't think that's too much about the privacy issue and all that. Okay, sorry.
Excellent. Laura?
Yes. I want to comment on the thing that on the gap between the generations. Of course, the younger generation puts their information in the personal information in the internet, in the Facebook, and so on. But still, when it comes to the violence of your privacy, I don't think there is a difference between the adult and the young boy or girl, because it's still your personal information, and I don't think that there is some difference within.
Very good. Please, we have another question too. We will put them together if you don't mind.
Hello. I'm Elena Boroda. I'm from Germany. I'm also a student from the College of Europe. I do have a question to the practitioners, to Ms. Tikhonova and Mr. Bowman. And I would like to build it on what you've mentioned, where you talked about the importance of cooperation and kind of different national notions of security. And I would like to know in how far the mind maps of border control officers reflect either like this European notion of security or like European priorities when it comes to border management, or is it kind of a mixed between a national and the EU priority? So how far, as comparing your Malta and your German experience, how far can you say there are like mind maps which differ very much, and in how far do you think they translate into the actions on the field?
This is an excellent question, but while you are thinking, Laura and team, let us take the second one just behind, and maybe I don't see everyone simply because there is a poll here of quite sizable magnitude. So if there is a question here, please don't be afraid. But the gentleman behind, yeah.
Thanks. Jonathan Cave, Rand Europe in Warwick. I wanted to slightly have a follow-up to the earlier discussion, particularly the notion that more information makes us better off. Information can be inaccurate, and the collection of information can be a chilling factor. In particular, I find it odd that Europe has chosen one of the weakest biometrics to use in its identification system. But in particular, in relation to people's attitudes towards information, there's an issue that not all the people involved in this are government people. I mean, I'm aware that here we're talking about border guards. It's a thin shell of the security and the privacy aspect. It's backed up by a lot of other organizations. Some are conventional security organizations. Some may be private sector organizations to which various functions have been devolved. They may not be bound in the same way. And that brings me to the final aspect, which is, yes, we have the European data protection directives. We're shortly to have a regulation that will change the nature of those. For example, freedom from automated processing will become, in a certain sense, much stronger. And it may make the job of doing these things or of reaching a common understanding of what they do much more difficult. And in that sense, I'd be very interested to hear from the panel as to whether they think that giving people the right to ask what information is held about them, when those people come as migrants who are already inhibited and traumatized, provides any effective form of protection, or isn't just a kind of Potemkin protection that allows us to say that we respect the fundamental rights while not making it possible for people meaningfully to exercise them.
Brilliant. Another excellent question. Would there be one more on this side? Anyone? No? I mean, there's enough substance to discuss in these two questions. Laura, if I could ask you about the different national perceptions of security. I mean, it seems to me that this is an extremely vital issue. I mean, you talked, both of you, a lot about cooperation, but for cooperation to be meaningful, there has to be at least some joint understanding of what the security threats are.
Okay, if I can start with the daily basis, our work is we are doing our work in accordance with the laws and regulations, and European regulations are integrated in our Latvian national regulations and laws. That's why they are interfering, and it's there are no strict boundaries between European legislation and Latvian, so they are interfering. And I think, my personal opinion, then we are assessing all the points of view.
Excellent, Tim.
Okay, to connect to the data question first, I think that is a very interesting point, because speaking about the practical side, I think it's forgotten a lot of times, because we as police officers, as the government side, we always want to collect information, use information. We have statistics and we have analysts, but particularly speaking of those migrants, I think, especially in Germany, there's among the public, there's a very high awareness of data collection, and people are very sensitive about this and get emotionally really, really quick or fast, probably a little bit faster compared to other countries. And for migrants coming to Europe seeking for freedom, security, a new future, I don't think they care too much in the first case about what data is collected, but of course they have the right to access those data, and of course they have to, because they deal with different authorities. It is important that the data collected is not used against them in general. Speaking of my part, or the part of my daily work, we have very clearly stated what data can be given out and what not. And I would say if somebody who's affected by or whose data is collected wants information, he will get this information. But from my point of view, I cannot oversee the whole thing. For the second question, that is very interesting, because you're getting exactly onto you put your finger in the wound. Of course, it is important to think nationally, even in times of a big joined Europe. We still have borders, and I think borders are very important, even if they're open. But you see among the public, as soon as something happens, as soon as we have a threat or a risk or something, people, talking about the Germans, for example, if there's a threat that could affect Germany, people will always ask for close the borders, don't let anybody in or anybody out. That's I think, as a person living in a state, you feel protected by borders. If there's a danger, if there's no danger, you don't care. So, of course, all police forces in all nations think primarily for themselves. I think that's natural. I'm a German police officer, so my main goal is about dealing with the criminality and my tasks in Germany. But you have to understand, and that's very important, and we're just, I would say, with the last couple years, I cannot really say how many years because I'm not in the force for that long, but we're getting there with Frontex, with joint missions. We have German police officers we have connection liaison officers in almost all German countries. We send them there just for information exchange, just to talk with other police officers and offer our help, or just say, hey, we do it that way, how do you do it? To learn from them. And it is very important. It's hard to answer your question, but it is very important to be aware of your own country and what's going on there, but you have to see the whole network. You have to see what is going on in Europe to understand what's going on in your country, because especially today, in our days, where you can just sit in a car, start in Berlin and be here in Warsaw a couple hours later without being checked, the officer, a wide range of fields of activity for criminals and all that, and you cannot fight this criminality by just sitting there and saying, this is my Germany, I'm very focused on what's going on in Germany, but I don't care about the rest. So I think we're on a good way here, and we really have to intensify this.
Thank you very much, Dennis. What would you say is the importance that migrants attach to data protection and data privacy from your research? What would be your sense?
I would like to say that since to me there is a kind of importance emphasized in this sense, because personal data protection is part of the visa liberalization process, and the countries which would like to join, in fact, to enjoy the freedom of movement, traveling to Europe, they should have these rights protected, and in the same time, the institution which is dealing with this kind of information, it should be independent from any kind of political influence, because we know very well that many times, and even now, right now, Ukraine is dealing with a problem in this sense. So that if there is a kind of influence from the political side, the European Union is gonna point this problem, and the country should solve it. But I would like to take the second question. It was about informing people and migrants, and I think that here I would not agree totally with what was said in the very beginning, that the EU, even if the European Union is doing a lot in order to improve the situation in the countries of origin of migrants, the migration will continue. Of course, the migration will continue, but the level will be lower. And in order to change this flow of migration, the EU should, first of all, should help the countries to, at least the countries of migration, of origin of migrants, should help them to improve the economic development. And here, discussing about this point, I would like to mention the example of the Republic of Moldova and Cape Verde, and also Georgia and Senegal, that right now have signed and running mobility partnerships that also is dealing with improving the capacities of the country to help the former migrants to resocialize and to be part of the society after they're coming back, and also to make the countries of origin attractive. So it should be a kind of balance between the attractivity of the EU and attractivity of the country of origin. Otherwise, you can't stop this process, because, again, I will mention the same reason why people are leaving their countries, and it's about socio-economic development. And it's not only about crisis and wars, because Ukraine, Moldova, countries from the Western Balkan, they don't have wars right now, but because of bad situation, poor social economic performance, migrants still try to find a way to the EU. So it should be a balanced approach towards the countries with whom right now the EU is negotiating liberalization process agreements.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dennis. In a panel on freedom and security, I cannot refuse to ask you about international protection, an issue which is very much at the heart of debate about the nexus between freedom and security. It has to do with the fact that the integrated border management is very much about going beyond the borders of the European Union, seeking cooperation with third parties. It also has to do with the fact that there are mixed flows of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. So the criticism which is very often posed and which refers to pre-border control, has to do with the fact that it impinges on on the right to international protection. Is that so in your view, and has both the legal framework and the practice been following suit in order to address these issues sufficiently? Romain, perhaps I can ask you first.
Yeah, well, talking about the legal issues, you're right. It's a really sensitive issue at the moment, and especially because one of the mission of border guards is to control borders and to prevent illegal migrants to come within the country they control. But on the other hand, we have the well-known principle of non-refoulement in public international law that says that you cannot preclude a migrant to enter a country if he has a reasonable reason or if he is an asylum seeker. So here we can see that there's really a thin line between respect of public international law and, on the other hand, between a breach of public international law. And we also have concerns. I mean, many NGOs have concerns about the way migrants are treated in detention centers, for example, in Greece. For the most well-known reports of Human Rights Watch from 2 years ago, I think. And then we also have problems regarding responsibility, because if supposing that there is a breach of fundamental rights in one of the mission of controlling external borders, and if this mission is operated by people from Frontex, I mean, if they are planning the operation, where does responsibility lie between national border guards or people from Frontex? So I would say that these three issues are the main sensitive topic at the moment for academic scholars, and many legal scholars are writing on the topic since a really long year ago. But then, at the moment, it's really, really sensitive.
And from the practitioner's point of view, Tim.
Yeah, from the practitioner's side, yeah, I would say, in general, can you, I'm sorry, yes. I thought this question, it was very general, very covering a lot of things. Can you specify, I mean, the legal framework, of course, the police, we are based on the legal framework. That's what, why we are there, and that's what we do. Can you specify in what way?
Let me rephrase it differently. I mean, if you look at the maritime operations, they have from the outset been carried out on the basis of very often national law of each participating states, and the EU legal framework has been slightly slower to emerge, to put it in a nutshell. Does that pose any problems in your view, or is it a manageable issue which can be solved through a cooperative approach?
Well, I think the European legal framework, of course, for us, it's we are bound to it, and I don't think there are any problems with it in the practical side. It's just, in my opinion, it's necessary. It's highly necessary that we all act on the same. That all, meaning all border guards in Europe, are acting on the same legal basis. It's we have external borders to the EU, and it is very important that me entering or crossing those borders, that I'm treated the right way or the same way at all external borders that I come into Europe. But for the practitioner side, I think it even has more advantages to have this than you would probably think that it causes problems, because we profitate from that. We also profitate not only of the legal framework, but the organizational framework that Frontex is part of, because it supplies technique, it supplies training missions and all that. So it's highly necessary, and we're good with that.
Laura?
Yes. If it comes to the national level, if we have some sort of violator or some situation in our country, and as soon as it comes to the international level, I think it's all about the cooperation and the information exchange. I will talk just simply, okay? if it's just some a person who violated some laws of Latvia and he went abroad, for example, to Lithuania, which is our member state. So there are a lot of institutions intervening. Latvia, Lithuania, and laws aren't so. They are different. Of course, the framework of the European Union is still there, but still, every country has its own laws and regulations, and I think it's very difficult just to be precisely all about the European Union. I think.
Just to add an example that I just said a couple of days ago, which shows how important this is, not only having those laws, but also executing them. Talking about looking for people, searching people by warrant or something. When we had a French guy who passed the border at our airport, and he was living in France, having friends in Germany, and was searched by Italy. So this is just the best example to see for a crime he committed in Italy, and that's just the best example to see that those frameworks, the legal frameworks, and what it gives to us, that it's working, and how highly necessary it is. Because when we open our borders and we don't have those old style, I call it old style controls, we have to ensure that the framework is working.
Thank you very much. As the BBC says, we have to leave it there, and our time is up. However, I have to say that our discussion has led me to the conclusion that there isn't any cross-generational difference when it comes to approach to the freedom and security nexus. As Romain said at the outset, one cannot go without the other. But my takeaway is also what Dennis told us about the normative power of the European Union. I think it is not frequently enough that we ask ourselves that question about the perceptions that we create on the other side of the border, and how we are read and interpreted by migrants, especially. Before I would like to ask you to applaud our speakers, let me say that right away after our panel, there will be the launching ceremony in this same room for a training platform called Sectorial Qualifications for Border Guarding. So I will invite Rainer Brenner from the training unit of Frontex to lead that launching ceremony. Please stay in the room, but before we do so, I would like to ask you for a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you very much.